Bowden.
Here.
Andrews.
Here,
All present.
thank you. Item 2 is proof of giving public meeting notice, Aaron.
Yep, notices are posted at both schools, Central Village of Dickeyville and Cuba City Hall, members of the media on Tuesday, October 15th.
Item 3 is consideration of the consent agenda. Are there any items A through E that the board would hold for further discussion? Hearing none, would someone move?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Joel,
Yes.
Parth.
Yep.
White,
Yes.
Hinderman, yes. Pohl,
Yes.
Bowden,
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes.
Motion carried.
And then discussion. The first one is the local referendum items with CISA Executive Director Jamie Nutter.
You're up. You got the floor, Amy.
So I was going to introduce myself, but thank you, Mr. Andrews, for the introduction. Hello, everybody who's here. I am doing a little bit of a tour here for several school districts that are going to referendum. My job or my role in my tour is just sharing information. What we're dealing with in Wisconsin is a math problem. Okay, I'm not going to get on a moral high ground about whether you should pass a referendum or not pass a referendum, but I'm going to provide some information from a regional perspective and a state perspective to give you an idea of why 28 of our 31 school districts in Southwest Wisconsin have to go to referendum to balance their budget. I'm going to bring a little bit of some local data that any of you can access from the DPI. I didn't have to bug Heather to get this information. Anybody can access this information that I'm going to share. If you go to dpi.wi.gov and you search the school finance, you can gather any of this data, and you can gather it for any school in the state of Wisconsin. So I always like to start off with the mission. What's the purpose, right? What's the purpose of your mission? Fostering an enthusiasm for learning with respect and care for all. So that's what dollars represent. That's what budgets represent. So whenever I present, I want to know what is the mission that you're trying to accomplish. Otherwise, it's just words on paper, words on the website. This is what you guys have posted for your public to see. This is what the profile of a graduate in Cuba City is. Acquire skills, critical thinkers, communicators, transfer learning to the future, pursue passion, and be responsible citizens. Every day, that's what the mission of the school, that's the vision. That's what you're trying to create with all of your students. An overview of this session, what I hope to provide some perspective for you is local financial data that's available from DPI, as stated earlier, and then just review the financial picture from the last year, and specifically the last couple of years, to give you an idea of why we're here. I think the math is pretty clear when we show this. So this is something that all of you should know. If somebody asks you a question on the street, as taxpayers, as board members, as administrators, you should know the answers to these questions. So when we look at all of the land value in the Cuba City School District, and we look at it from an equalized standpoint, not an assessed standpoint, from an equalized standpoint, with your TIF out, and my understanding is you're going to have a pretty big TIF in your district coming up. Congratulations to you, by the way, for that, out on Highway 151. But right now it's 539 million. That's up 12.4% from last year, right? So your equalized value is 539 million. That's important for a couple of reasons. One, whatever your levy ends up being, it gets split amongst those $539 million of value, whether it's woods, whether it's businesses, whether it's houses, wherever that value is, that 539 gets spread out. And so in Southwest Wisconsin, when we think about that, we have acres of fields versus acres of two-story businesses, we don't have as much to spread that out. And so in order for us to be competitive with the rest of the state, we rely heavily on state aid. State aid supplements that. Otherwise, your mill rate, your tax rate would be triple what it is if it wasn't for state aid. When we talk about your membership, those are all the students, the FTEs of students who live in your district, whether you educate them or not. Now, you might have more students than that, but those are the students who live within the boundaries of Cuba City. And it's a 3-year average, and it's membership. So a 4K student, for example, counts as 0.6 FTEs. An early childhood student counts as 0.5. They count as 0.6 of a student, or 0.5. And then we look at the enrollment on the third Friday count for 3 years in a row, and we average it, and it comes out to be 613. That's your average. Then there's another count in January, it's second Friday, and that count probably would be a little bit different, but they average the two to come up with your wealth in the district, and it's called value per student. So if you want to just quick calculate your value per student, you take 539 million divided by 613, and you get the value. In the state of Wisconsin, the average is about $750,000, give or take. Your total revenue limit is 7.6 million, and that's before your debt payments and your community service. But from an operational standpoint, it's 7.6 million. And then you receive state aid. State aid is kind of a confusing piece that people don't understand very well, and I'm not going to get into the weeds on that, but I will tell you it's all of your reimbursable expenses from the year before. Why it gets so confusing is it's revenue that you receive, but it's based on your expenses the year before. So in other words, you spend the money in year one, you get aided on it in year two. And so we're going to see how that works here moving forward. So we think about the value within Cuba City over time. The longitudinal data from DPI goes back to about 1990. And you can see that you were right around 100 million at the time. And, you know, it's just had a steady increase. In 98 to 2000, it leveled off. Not so much because land values went down, but because the legislators initiated what was called use value. Pasture, farms, forestry, right? Otherwise, at the time, land values were creeping up, and they wanted some relief for agriculture. So they created land use, and so that showed some kind of flat equalized value increase. Then it started to increase again, and then we see a little bit of a dip in 08 and another dip in 10 and 11. And, you know, if you were in the housing market at those times, you know, if you bought, like me, you built a house in 08 and you had this big payment, and then all of a sudden your house was worth about 75% of that the following year. Thank goodness I didn't have to borrow anything and didn't need a home equity loan, right? Or anyone else. And then now we know if we bought a house in 13 and wanted to sell it in 24, we'd be in pretty good shape, right? Land values have increased tremendously. And as stated, from last year to this year, 12%. So when we think about the revenue limit, so no matter how much the value goes up of your land, the school district doesn't have any more money to spend because of that. So people think, oh my goodness, my value's up, my taxes are going to go up. But we're still dividing it by 7.6 million. So if it goes up to 600 million, we're still dividing it by 7.6. Actually, everybody's share drops a little bit if it goes up. Doesn't necessarily mean your taxes are going to go down, but it doesn't always mean that your taxes are going to skyrocket because your values go up. When we look at mill rate over time, this doesn't mean your taxes, but your rate, right? So if your rate goes down, but your assessment goes up, you know, taxes are going to fluctuate. But when you look at rates, and we go all the way back, to revenue limits, you can see, right, in 84, and then they peaked, right, in 93 when revenue limits came into play. The mill rate in 1993 was over $20 in Cuba City, over $20 versus $7.18 today. So think about that. If we didn't have state aid, your mill rate would probably be somewhere around $30 today. So on a $200,000 house, your taxes for the school portion would be about $6,000 just for the school portion versus about $1,400 right now, right? So you can see that Cuba City has stayed about with the state. The red is the state, the blue is Cuba City. The trend all stayed the same with what's happened. And that's attributed to revenue limits and state aid. So for the taxpayers, that's been a good thing. One other thing to think about from a state aid perspective, and this is a misconception, and I'll get to this in a minute, but state aid does not, if state aid increases, it does not give the school districts more money to spend. It just pays more of the local taxpayers' bill. So with this revenue limit of 7.6 million, you have to make up the difference. Otherwise, you have to pay the whole thing. So the more state aid that you get, the less the taxpayers have to pay. And I'm going to show an example of that coming up here. But first of all, I just want to put into perspective. Was anybody at board meetings before 1992? Raise your hand. Anybody remember hearing about board meetings before 1992? Or annual meetings? You had an annual meeting before 1992? Was there more at an annual meeting in 92 than today?
Yes.
Yeah, because of revenue limits, right? So when your mill rate's $20, you're going to have more people in your gym. But let me put that in perspective. So in 1992, and actually in 1993 it was $20. And that's what I should have used, but I used 92 here, so forgive me. But 1901 was $19.01. In 23, it's $7.18. So I used last year's data. When I put this together, the new data came out today.
And this is without our capital projects, right? That's 718.
That's last year's number.
Last year's number was
977.
977. So
Oh,
I think-
96,
I
okay.
think that's that minus the operating referendum we passed in 2020.
Okay,
Is what
okay.
it looks like that is.
Okay. So it's going to be close. Okay. So I'm using data from DPI. So the actual data should be 737. So it's going to be fairly close percentage wise to make my point. So we look at 1992 in Grant County, the average home was about $55,000. So the average taxpayer was paying a rate of $19.01, would have paid about $1,045.55 in 1992. The average salary or the median income in 1992 was about $25,000. So when we think about those gyms being full and the tax rate and the percentage of income that was going toward school taxes, in 1992 was about 4.18% of a median income went toward school taxes. Now we look at today, it's about 198,000 in Grant County is about the average home. In this example, 718 with the rate, the average taxes are about $1,421.64 for the school portion. And when you look at the average income of $63,862 as the median income, that's about 2.23% of median income. So why is that important? People in 1992, the generations before us, basically sacrificed more. They gave a bigger portion, but they also were more involved because that's why the gyms were full every single year, because 4.18% of their income was going to taxes, right? And when you put that in real money of 25,000 versus 63, it was a lot bigger chunk, right? So almost twice as much money of disposable income went to school taxes then. So I think that's important to understand the context of where we are today and kind of just what we expect schools to do and the cost that happens. You think about all the services we provide in school compared to 1992. You know, I have schools that have daycare before and after. They get breakfast, lunch. We even have schools that have grants where dental hygienists come in. They get their dental care there. We have nursing services. We have all kinds of services for about 2.23% of income compared to 4% in 1992. So just to give you an idea of a revenue limit and how revenue limit is determined, this is an example of schools in Wisconsin, and this looks different in every school across the state. So state aid is determined by your local wealth, what the state defines as wealth. Anybody remember what that is? Value per member, right? Value per member. The more value you have, the less aid you get. So so here's the game we want to play, right? So the levy, as we were talking earlier, is the difference between the revenue limit and state aid. So because a school district gets more state aid, doesn't mean they get more money to spend. They need this to be bigger in order to balance their budget, not the state aid. And I'll illustrate this here. So it's kind of like those game shows, you know, where they say, hey, big money, give me big money, big money, big money, because we want that part of the levy to be lower. We want more state aid, so our responsibility isn't bigger as taxpayers. Still doesn't give the school district more money to spend. It's think about it like this. This example is 7 plus 3 equals 10. You could have 6 plus 4 equals 10. You can have 5 plus 5 equals 10. 3 plus 7 equals 10. It's still 10. That's the amount of money there is to spend. In this example, state aid is 7. So what's the rest? 3. So that's what the taxpayers have to come up with in this particular district. So this district would be extremely land value poor in order for that to happen. I want to show you an example of Cuba Cities. So this is everything. This is state aid, levy, and debt, $9.9 million. Somewhere right around $10 million. It's empty, right? So as taxpayers, what do you have to come up with? The difference between state aid. You have to fill in the white. And here's where you're at. $5.2 million comes from the state. Without that, you would be responsible for all of this. Instead, because of state aid, you're only responsible for under half of that. So when you pass your building referendum, all of your operations, all of your teachers, all the salaries, the lawn mowing, everything, after you spend that money, the state picks up half of that. So your taxpayers are only coming up with half of that. In fact, 48% of it. Local responsibility is the difference between state aid and the revenue limit. Now, no matter if you got more state aid, if it was 6 million, 7 million, you'd still only have 9.9 million, right? So that's one thing to understand. And it's a misconception because oftentimes when we hear in the news that we have historical investments in school from a state budget perspective, this is what is being talked about in that calculation as well. It still doesn't give the school more authority that they need to pay increased expenses. It just gives the taxpayers more money, and they call it school aid. And that's not where it stops. So at the annual meeting, you're going to approve a levy and a mill rate. And you're going to assume that's what it's going to be. But that's not the only aid that our taxpayers get. And we appreciate that, especially here. We just wouldn't be able to do what you're doing without state aid. There's just no way. We couldn't afford it. And we couldn't afford it if we didn't get this too. So when you get your tax bill, first place I want you to look, because that should be coming out here in probably a month right around Thanksgiving. You should get that. Look in this box called school levy credit. So in addition to the 52% that every taxpayer gets in state aid, we also get it, we call that on the front side. We also get relief on the back side called the school levy credit. In this particular case, this number is $255.91. That number is going to be dependent on the value of your property. The more value you have, the more relief you're going to get in that number. But that is also considered that's also considered part of the school budget from the state. When they give taxpayer relief in the name of school levy credit, they're paying part of the bill for you on both the aid side and the school levy credit side. That's not more money for schools to spend. It's more money that's being paid to the school on your behalf, and they're stuck at the limit. And that's why we have so many schools now going to referendum. And I'm going to illustrate that over the last 10 years of why that's happening, given the formula. And I'm giving a really high, oversimplified version of this. And I know you're getting a lot of facts, and you're like, I'm not following this, dude. But it is complicated, and I'm trying to keep it simplified. And if you don't remember anything else, I want you to understand that more state aid doesn't mean more money for the school to spend. If you don't get anything out of that, you have to remember that piece. That they need they need the ceiling to be higher, not more state aid. If we get more state aid, that helps us from taxpayers. That's what our schools need. But let's just take a look at the last 10 years, because it's part of the math problem. So I've got a couple different colors here, and it might be blurry from where you're standing. Let's see what it looks like. Yeah, it's not blurry. All right. So over here, I've got some figures of the number of times that school districts were allowed to raise this line. So when we say we're increasing the revenue limit, it means we're going from 9.9 to, in this example, 10.2, 10.3, right? It doesn't mean that we're getting more of this. We need this raised, okay? So when we say that the revenue limit was raised, that's what we're talking about. So these are the numbers that describe that. So, and I only went back 10 years. It gets worse if I go back further. From 15 to 19, schools were not given any authority to increase revenue, period. How did they make it? Well, we were hovering, this green line right here is inflation over the base. So the black line is all the base of every year. And these lines above it represent the inflation that occurred on those years. So from 15 to 19, we were able to make it because we got an increase in categorical aid. That's outside of the revenue limit. Schools got categorical aid, but they got no revenue limit authority to build their base up. And in 15-16, we had inflation of 1.62. In 16-17, 0.12, less than 1%. So if it was dollars and pennies, it would be less than a penny, right? That went up 0.12, like not insulting your intelligence here, but I have to emphasize this, like a chunk of a penny, right? 0.12. 2017-18, 1.28%. And then in 18-19, it went 2.15%, 2.44% in 19-20. But in 19-20, school districts were given $175 per student authority. In 2021, $170. So what happened? What happened in 2020? Right, we had the great pandemic that we're hopefully kind of still coming out of. 21-23 was our new biennium, and we got a zero increase in revenue limit authority. We got new money in special ed aid. No, we didn't get any new money that year. We got zero money in 21-23. But here's the logic. So typically, school districts ask for a standard $200 per student. That's kind of what they needed to balance the budget. It wasn't enough, but they could make it work. And they got zero from 21-23. From the legislator standpoint, however, all of this federal money was pouring in from the federal government. There were school districts in CESA 3 and maybe a little bit north that were getting anywhere from $700 to $1,200 per student from the federal government for ESSER and GEARS between those two. I don't know what your numbers were. I think they were $500-600 equal per student.
We got the state minimum.
So about $500 per student was state minimum. And the logic from the legislators was, hey, they can make it on $200 if they're getting $500, and we give them all kinds of flexibility. They ought to be able to make it for a couple years. We'll be able to kind of put money away for a rainy day, because if the economy goes in the tank, we'll have money for safety net programs. We'll have money for cash flow. And so that was kind of the logic from the legislators to build that up during that time. So they said, schools, spend your federal dollars. In the next biennium, we'll take care of you and we'll make it whole. So the logic would have probably worked out okay, because you can see in 23-24, we got 325, and 24-25, we got 325. The problem was we got hit with 4.79% CPI or inflation, followed by 8%, followed by 4.37%. If you want to talk about even things worse, this is CPI is like bread and supplies and everything that we spend. If you want to get hit even worse, talk to the county folks, because all of their supplies went up 200, 300%, right? So we're talking 4.7, 8%, 4.37. When we've been planning for anything from 0 to 2, we got hit really hard. But here's the other problem. All that one-time money went away. So it created what's referred to as a fiscal cliff. So in 21-23, we got no new money, but in 23-25, we lost all the money. So we didn't get a base. Like, we didn't get a floor to build it off. It was like, okay, they gave it to us, but then it dropped all the way down. So from 21-23, right, we had federal dollars to fill this in, but when it came time to 23-24, typically we could build off a smaller base. We had to make this big climb. So we had to have all of the money for the base from 21-23, plus we had to have the new money for 23-25. And so on average across CESA 3, in order to balance budgets for an average school, we needed $650 per year, because we needed to fill in the gap, the base from 21-22, 22-23, and then allow for all this inflation. Instead, we got half of what we needed. Now we have We have 28 of our 31 school districts that are going to referendum because of that. Because you just can't do the math. You can't have inflation at 4.7, 8%, 4.37, stick all the money into tax relief, don't allow enough relief for the schools to balance the budget, and just expect them to be able to do that. We're seeing everything across the region we have school districts that have fund balances that drop from $1 million down to 200,000. School districts only get paid from the state about 5 times a year. So they either have to short-term borrow or they have to use their fund balance and save that interest payment at a time when interest rates are higher. We have districts that are making tremendous cuts at a time when we used all those tricks up. If you go back further to 10, 11, 10, 12, we had a year, people probably remember the word Act 10. The problem, we hear about all the things that happened to teachers during that time, but what happened to school finances during that time is we got cut. It was the first time that we got cut money. Like we had less money to work with from one year to the next. Usually when we talk about cuts, we got 325 and we needed 650. We still got 325. It wasn't enough. But we actually had negative to work with. And how did we balance the budgets then? The state said it was illegal to pay the teacher's portion of the retirement, the employee's portion of the retirement, and to pay all their insurance. So we're going to take all that stuff away and balance the budget. And that's what they did for 2 years. So we thought we were out of the woods because we took all those things away from employees and we balanced our budget. And we thought that would be the new base. But then we got hit with 2 more years of zero. So if I go back here, we got 0, 0, even further back. And with 0, 0, that's when schools started doing all kinds of tricks, like cutting LMC directors. It wasn't about what was good for kids or about how much extra they had. It was what's the least impact that we can have on kids. So it's things like orchestra, LMC directors, family and consumer ed programs across the area went in the tank, and now kids don't have opportunities for that. I mean, all those tricks were used up back here. So now when we get hit with this, we've got no more tricks. Our schools got no more tricks because they made all their cuts here, and they've been trying to survive here. So that's where we're stuck. So as I was stating, 28 of our 31 school districts are going to an operating referendum. And I would say that it'd be 29 out of 31 because one of the schools went for a building referendum, and they probably would have had to go to a building referendum if they had the money for the maintenance that they needed. It was strictly maintenance. So I would almost classify that. The other 2 schools, and I'll say who they are, Lancaster and Seneca, they passed a significant recurring referendum. And now, between those 2 schools, excuse me, I got to have Kleenex here. I thought I was going to be able to make it, but thank you so much. Anyway, and the reason that they were able to make it is because they passed a recurring referendum. Not only do those schools not have to go to referendum because they built their base up with a recurring referendum and phased it in, they're the 2 lowest mill rates in our area right now. Everybody thinks that a recurring referendum is such a bad thing because we lose control. No, it just builds the base up. Otherwise, you have the same impact as ESSER dollars. If you don't do it, are you guys doing non-recurring?
We're doing recurring.
Oh, you're doing recurring. Okay, sorry, I was going to. But anyway, if you do a non-recurring referendum, it's the same concept that we had here. You put the money in, one-time money for multiple year expenses, for reoccurring expenses. And so if you don't build your base up, then you got to come back to the public every 5 years. And it's the same old thing every 5 years, right? It's like, okay, if we don't pass this referendum, we're going to cut. You know how fast 5 years goes? It's just like that. So I have schools that we work with it's every 5 years they have to go to referendum, and then they have to start that process 4 years in. And when you're focusing on money, what are you not focusing on? You're not focusing on innovation. You're not focusing on great things for kids. You're just focused on trying to survive. Just focus on, are we going to have a school? And that's kind of what we're seeing. We're seeing a mixed bag. And so we have some that'll go to non-recurring, not because it's the right thing to do, but it's the only way that their taxpayers will understand that they can go to referendum, because they don't understand the difference between a recurring and a non-recurring. And they don't understand it. It's complicated. But that's where the math problem is. So what a lot of people think, if you don't look across the region, here's what every community thinks. Well, gosh, we mismanaged. You guys mismanaged your money. If I ran my business like that, we would be broke too. No, that's not the truth. The truth is all this happened, and you don't have the ability at a school to raise your prices on products. Your only way to raise your price on products is to go to referendum. That's what you do. Everybody else, everything that you're buying went up. Everything that you bought from everybody, the price of that went up. And they say, oh, well, we don't want you to go to referendum, so we're going to give it to you half off. I use this metaphor with somebody about why school districts have to go to referendum, or why their expenses are there. Because people understand building. Let me talk to you about that. It's just in a metaphorical standpoint. So let's assume that you were over budget on a building. You could say, well, you know what? We bought that special colored paint. Let's just go to a plain colored paint. And you know, we had this decorative stone. Let's get rid of that and let's just go to something more plain. I wouldn't even touch on a building project that's over budget. If you're over budget on a building, you know what you have to do? You have to cut square footage out. And when you cut square footage out of a building, it changes the whole design of the building. You know what happens? Now let's talk really in school. You know what happens when you have to make cuts? It changes the whole outline of your building, changes the whole focus from innovation to surviving. The one advantage that you have in Cuba City that your counterparts don't is you have real relief coming. And that relief is along 151. I'm sure that's tiffed out for 9 years. Okay? For 9 years, they're not going to help you with anything. Verona went through the same thing. And when Epic got tiffed in, everybody's taxes went down. But what they chose to do instead of lower everybody's taxes is build a huge high school with no increase to their taxes. At least you have that advantage going for you. You have growth. I was in a meeting on another school district, and we had some other people from the area who are kind of experts in how taxation works. And they said, in order for us, if you think about it, the cost of things keep going up. And so in order for us to keep our taxes floating so we don't have to fund all the new costs, we have to have growth and we have to build. So in fact, in that community, they needed the equivalent of a new Quick Trip or a half a Walmart every single year to be able to maintain growth. If you don't keep up with your school, it's tied directly to economic development. The people who make decisions about economic development want the same things you want. So we always think of it being nebulous. The most valuable thing to them right now is time. They want to live in the community. They want their kids to go to good schools. And if they don't, they're not afraid to drive. So if you have good schools and the people make decisions, have kids, and you have a good school, you have a better opportunity for economic development. On the contrary, ever been to a town when a school closes? The economic development is gone. And the final misconception that people don't think beyond what's right in front of them is, if your school goes away, not that that's where we're at, but if your school goes away, there's this misconception like, oh, well, I won't have taxes. No, you'll have taxes. You probably have greater taxes, but they'll be going to another community. And that's the other thing I think that we forget about in Southwest Wisconsin, that all of our schools in Southwest Wisconsin are at the heart of it. And every once in a while, when the math doesn't work out, we have to fix our own problems. I hear people all the time say, oh, well, the state formula is broken. We got to do something about that. You want the state to pay more than 50, you don't want to pay you're paying 48%? You want the state to pay 54%? Where other places are getting like 4% on the other side of the state aid, 5%. But people don't want to pay, in some of our places, they're getting 70%, but we want the state to pay 72 so we can pay 28. So I don't mean to turn this into a sermon, but I think we have to realize how blessed we are with state aid, that every once in a while, when we come up with these math problems because we want to have a great school, help is not coming our way. We got to kind of take the bull by the horns, and we have to solve our own problems. And as long as it's within reason, we have to do that. And that's why 28 of our 31 school districts are looking at that. And it's just not a Southwest Wisconsin thing. Pick up a newspaper. It's happening across the state because of this math problem right here. And once you solve your problem, hopefully that solves the problem long term. And if you're looking at recurring, you're looking at a long-term solution, not a Band-Aid. So it's a little harder. It's a little bit more explaining, but I think if you're going after reoccurring expenses and building your base up, you're going to have a much higher percentage of not having to go back to the taxpayers in 3 or 4 years. So anyway, part fact, part sermon, but I didn't know if anybody had any questions about any of this, because there's a lot of stuff I threw at you, but I tried to say high level. You look like you're itching for a question. No? No? Any questions from the board?
I appreciate the sermon / information. Obviously, a slightly different way of looking or thinking about it. Obviously, you're, I'm sure, right that help is not coming and we need to fix our own problem. But in terms of thinking that the state could have used some of their rainy day funds to increase, the money that's given, I guess the other two things that bother me is that in 1993, they didn't really value each child in Wisconsin the same and establish a dollar per head. They just froze everybody at what they were spending. So there's a disparity between all of the schools throughout Wisconsin and what their base is. And the other part is that the concern over, the fact that there's maybe a perception there is too many schools by, at least one legislator, and limiting new money for schools.
Well, just to illustrate your point, the range of what the revenue limit authority is in our area ranges from this year. I think it's the low revenue ceiling is $12,300 per student, and there are districts in our region that spend as much as $18,000 per student. So that's a pretty big range, per student. The second point you make about 1993 is nobody knew how it was going to come out, right? So whoever spent a lot of money in 1993 they've had more luck. The third point that you make, Gary, about that goes along with the formula about a lack of will to raise the revenue limit that we're making us do it at the local level to fix our problems at the local level is not a problem with the formula. It's a problem with the will to fund the formula. So I think there's a difference in that, because we don't want this, at least in Southwest Wisconsin, until we come up with something better. If we lose state aid, we're in trouble. And when we talk about losing schools and losing the heart of our communities with our schools, if state aid goes away, that's what happened to Iowa about 25 years ago. And now there's schools with 7 different names on them. Any other comments, questions, Chuck?
I was working over there for years. They went to a 1% sales tax. Residual they're building on. But they're in a bigger area. Well, but it all adds up.
Yeah, and they're funded a little bit differently.
Yeah.
They specifically say building and grounds, like the purpose of their categorical aid is for building and grounds for that purpose.
Right. See, the county has a half percent here.
Mhm.
Which adds up. They gotta pay mine tomorrow.
Well, when I'm driving on the road, I'll
you're thinking it right.
thank you for it. I was like, oh, this is a nice smooth road. Thanks, Chuck.
Is there any other questions for Jamie?
That's
Jamie,
a lot
thank you.
clearer.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yep, you're
Thank you.
welcome. Have a great night, everyone.
Thanks.
You too. Thanks.
Alrighty, that leads us into our upcoming referendum and what kind of communication do we want to do? I know we discussed it last meeting. And I've had and heard comments. I have, so I think it's appropriate we revisit how we want to send communication. I think, at least in my mind, last time it was like we weren't going to spend the money to send communication out in mailers or what have you to our voters. But I've heard concern contrary to that would make me want to maybe at least have the board reconsider whether we want to do that. I mean, as you look through our plan, I think the only way people would get information is to either come to an athletic event and actually look and keep the insert, or come to one of the informational meetings. And if you don't do that, short of maybe seeing it in a newspaper or whatever, I don't know how they're going to get the information. I've had Jen Casper from Queen Bee Radio ask whether we wanted to do a radio ad. So I guess I'll shut up and we'll revisit what kind of communication in the next 3 weeks do we want to do.
Relatively certain some flyers or pamphlets went out in the water bills in Dickeyville. So we were able to, I'm pretty sure, hit everybody in Dickeyville through the water bill process. And I double check with Donna and ask if that's still something we can do. She's completely fine with that. I did get some more information from her wanting more set schedule times for, not schedule, more information on our meetings coming up. And do we have flyers for those meetings? I sent her a picture of the times and she said, well, this isn't going to work at cutoff. Do you have flyers? So if I could get some flyers, I could make sure that she could have those. The other thing that came up, there was, and I think Aaron, we clarified it, was the people asking Donna have been more from the Keeler area, but we're not doing a listening, we're doing an informal correcting Keeler. So I want to make sure that we get the information to Donna to get to Keeler folks that are asking about these sessions. So I could take flyers over and drop them off. Just let me know. We can get them out in Dickeyville and hang up. So that's Dickeyville.
Any thoughts on radio ads?
I don't know that radio is the way you want to go.
We do have, there's an
who knows
article.
what station they're listening to, if they're even listening to radio.
There's an article come out in Tri-County Press, I believe, tonight, covering some of it. I did another interview with them today for next week. They're doing one. They'll have a FEMA update and a more economic breakdown, so it'll be in the Tri-County Press. There was a story done in Telegraph Herald, I want to say maybe a couple weekends ago, that talked about all the schools that are going through there. So there are some of those things in the newspapers as well.
What about a large advertisement in the Roundup, which most residents should get?
I thought they were out of production now. Isn't the roundup done?
I got mine this week.
I thought as of November, well, maybe it's November 1st.
That what
But the roundup, I thought they were, I
discontinuing?
thought so.
I guess I didn't hear that, but
Yeah, I hadn't heard
I
that.
don't know if that's true.
Was that the Robert the shopping? I think the shopping
These are
was,
the shopping news.
shopping was cut out per the Sheen area and aisle, and they're not going to businesses. What I was told with the shopping. And Clavo's been on the radio, what, a week?
The referendum.
I heard
I
one
heard
of
every,
the board members today.
I hear it when I'm playing in the shop. About every 2 or 3 hours, you know.
Could I ask why the radio station would not be a good idea, or why there would be a concern? I'm just curious.
There's so many varied radio stations. How many to get on?
Well, I'm just saying, even if you hit one or two, and, I mean, I know I don't listen to local radio stations, but I know there's people that do, and it, again, might reach the people that were not able to reach, maybe aren't going to sporting events, or don't check Facebook, and don't go onto the website. I mean, again, I think the goal is just to reach as many people as we possibly can.
I think Queen Bee Radio has different packages, like, hey, if you want to, you can get these 4 radio stations.
I was
you know,
gonna say,
for
there
this
are
price.
3 main radio
three?
stations in the area. It's Radio Dubuque, Queen Bee,
Yeah.
and Town Square Media.
Mhm.
And they have, like, Town Square has 102.3, 103.3, 107.5. Then this one.
Can I just speak to that real quick?
Yeah.
So I didn't get to talk to Mr. Olson today, one of those days again. The union is going to do radio spots and something in the newspaper. So
Thank you.
just to
Thank you.
put that out there.
What is
Thank
the
you.
cost of that? I'm just curious.
They didn't give me a
It's,
cost.
it's $35 for a 30-second spot.
One
And
time
you,
or?
you can
ongoing?
buy different packages,
You'd buy
right?
different packages, yeah. So right now, we're looking at doing like a 15-minute for the informational meetings that are coming up and just saying, be an informed voter, come to these, and this is, what that is, and then we're gonna put the brochure in the paper. In the 2 paper, so the TCP and the Roundup.
I only say because I just know, I mean, it does reach different people. I mean, I did an ad a few years back and Mark looked up and said, "Hey, but Angie, I heard you on 929." And so, I mean, people do hear it, I mean,
With what our teachers are doing, does anybody want us to do either additional or something different?
What were you doing? What, you mentioned that there were 3 different, but what radio stations?
Right now, what we're looking at is doing the farm report time, because we thought that might be a good, to get out to that community,
Different audience.
and WGLR
So that's Queen
in a
Bee.
prime spot. So,
have you
and Miss
ever
Meyer's gonna
done-
be our voice.
done interviews with you, Aaron, on the radio? I mean, I know, I'm thinking about a past referendum I was a part of. I feel like that they did interview the superintendent and there was some stuff occasionally.
Yeah, in 22, they did not.
They did
So I
not?
don't know if they did in 17 before I got here.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah, I went to the radio station along with another board member, I believe.
Okay.
It was on air
Mhm.
or what, recorded.
Yeah.
The message just came from RJ Osterholz about, whether we wanted to reach out to our board about advertising for the referendum, so.
It sounds, any case like this, I'm not sure, can you get spots during the football and games and volleyball game announcements, or they won't do that? Is that profiting?
I think if I remember, because I think people pay for those
They
spots,
do.
and that's why they go to those events.
Okay, that's what
I
wasn't
think
sure.
that this, and if it's the same thing you guys said, it was pretty prescriptive, like if you buy these packages are $35 and they'll go at this time. If you want to pay more, it's for a more prime spot, or less for less busy times, but it was like, 6 to 8 or noon to 2, it was something like that.
So we couldn't do it like, I know we purchased an advertisement through the football game, so we couldn't do something like that. Conference play coming up, I'm thinking, people are probably listening to the game more, and when they come across and say, hey, I don't know, can you do that is that a person you can do? I don't know.
I don't think we've ever done that. I'm not sure.
I don't know if you
Yeah.
can, I'm just kind of like, is that something you can't do? I didn't know if it was,
You should be able to buy time during that football game. Like 106.1 is the one that normally has that, which is a Queen Bee
Yeah.
station. I mean, if that's route you want to go, I mean, I just don't think general radio is a great way to spend money. I mean, it's so broad. When you talk about 3 different radio groups, each has 4 stations. Where do you put your money? Something like the football game, I think would be, people are apt to listen to that.
Volleyball games with play coming up, I mean. And we have a lot, I mean, we have conference play, and I'm imagining our volleyball team's gonna continue to do very well, and then, so, yeah, right, I mean.
I will look at that.
I think that's worth asking, but I do agree with Dan's point that if we can't do it in a very targeted way like that, I don't know that I'm comfortable spending more money, though I do appreciate the union making that outreach. I think that's just concerting our efforts of thinking, well, if you're handling these pieces, what are other things we can be doing? And maybe it is that very targeted ad placement, or maybe it's, I don't know, helping build more for social.
I think something else to consider, just the number of questions that have been asked at the sporting events that we've held information at.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's the audience that needs the information.
We might be
So I don't know if a
might be
sporting
preaching to the choir. on that.
game,
Yeah.
I don't know if that is different.
Well, the people who are making the effort to come out to the game are probably a little more engaged than like, well, if I catch you on the radio, maybe you're hitting
Sure.
a little bit different population, but that's a good point too. It's the people who aren't
It's that,
engaged with the
Maine, when
school.
you consider that you have more than half of your taxpayers don't have kids in school, so they
Mhm.
may or may not come to school for anything. And so,
Mhm.
if we don't provide, or at least I guess an attempt to get that information to them, I mean, I don't know that if we mailed something to everybody's house, whether you get one more vote or not, I have no idea, but I guess you can at least say you tried.
I wouldn't mail. I'll be
Just
honest.
dealing with mailing
Mailing,
is
I've had
almost, it's too late
17
now.
within the last 3 days that I
Yeah.
didn't even look at, like, I just literally
Throw 'em
fingered
away.
through them and threw them away. So I don't think mailing for this, at this time is right. Maybe in April is a different answer, a different story. But I kind of agree with Tina. I think the farm report is a perfect time because there's a large group of people that I know listen to that, as well as for the obituaries. As gruesome as that, I mean, as sad that it is, that is, but I think that's a perfect, that's the target area and the target group that I think you're hitting. So thank you for that.
I know my father-in-law, he went to the obituaries of the TH every day to see if he was in there.
Yeah,
So-
yeah.
All right, so I will look into whether we could have some type of ad during the football or volleyball, whether we can purchase that, or maybe even if they're willing to do like kind of an interview about the referendum at halftime, something along those lines.
Any other thoughts? Time is ticking. It's 3 weeks from last night.
Do we have existing flyers? Oh, I know we've had like some handouts of them.
We've got one that's kind of detailed, like how much it costs for 100, 2, 3, 4, and 500. That's one. And then we have a flyer that was kind of the fancy one that Tina came up with. That's black and gold, and that has those are the trifold. Those are the 2 pieces that were taken to all of our events.
Just kind of spitballing, but I don't know if maybe there are businesses around that we could laminate a couple of those and have those. Like I think about like Nick's, if they're okay with it. Like you're sitting there eating breakfast and perusing the information while you're waiting for your food, something like that.
Maybe contact the Chamber of Commerce and see if there are groups that would be willing to do that.
Thank you.
said it went out in the Dickeyville water bills. That was the announcement about the information session.
No, it was,
It was how much is it gonna cost
cost
to have
of the
information
flyer,
access.
yeah. The information session she'd asked about, so I sent just a screenshot from Facebook and
Okay.
stuff, and so if we can get flyers, I have those times, like, that would be great or something.
Is that something we're doing for Cuba City? At all, do we know?
They don't do a water bill like in an envelope. Ours are just that, it's kind of like a postcard. so they don't have that same
I
thing.
get a bill
Ours
every,
are
the
an
fir-
en-
I get
ours are
the
an
first of the
envelope.
month.
Or the envelope?
Yeah,
Oh,
with a lot of
You're
other,
just not paying your bill.
I always, I always see
That's why I
it.
got it.
yeah, it comes out the first of the month, so it'd be like the week, right, it'd be the day, a couple days before the election.
Okay.
There's often another pamphlet with it, I mean, there's
Oh,
often
yeah.
another
Yeah.
advertisement or something with it.
Yeah, they usually put everything in there, including the recycle dates
Yep.
and whatever
Yeah.
else.
Okay. I'll check with them. That same thing.
Anything else?
Yeah, you're
Right.
right. This will be the last meeting before the vote.
Yes,
isn't
it is. Yep. Thank you, administration and board members, for the sessions that you've already held, and hopefully we will get some more people to come for the future ones, so.
Speaking of with the Dickeyville session, I think, I have the sheet pulled up and it looks like Angie, Gary and I were all planning on attending. If there's more, anyone else, we will need to post
Yeah.
that publicly. So I didn't know if anyone else was intending to attend that one.
I will say the one that, was it last Thursday, was very informative, and I thought you guys did a very good job at it.
Alrighty, public recognition. I think I saw a name on there for something. Scared her
Carrie,
away.
you vote on this?
She
crossed her name off.
she had her meeting for volleyball season
Oh, okay.
at 7:30.
Do you want to speak to what she was? Okay, I
I
don't,
just know that she told me she had to leave at 7:30, so.
I don't know what it is.
okay.
Locker room concern.
So I just wondered if Chris knew what it was. Okay. All righty. Moving on, administrative reports. Jason, would you do elementary report, please?
You bet. Been an exciting month since our last meeting. To start with, Cuba City Elementary School first, second, and third graders had a just magnificent surprise on October 9th when local business One Up USA teamed with a nonprofit organization, CannedAid, to donate a bike and a helmet to each student. So a special thank you to Robbie and Brooke Lang for bringing that excitement, and thrilled to the school and community. In total, they donated 116 bikes and helmets that were donated, gifted to our students. In the past month, our fourth grade students attended the Platteville Historic Reenactment event, and our fifth grade classes attended the Dubuque Symphony Orchestra Arts Trek. I want to thank the Cuba City Parents Music Club, Lane Custom Chopping, and John Murray for donating time and resources that were needed to make those experiences happen. I also want to thank the staff involved for seeking out that funding to make sure they could provide those events for our students. Staff members at the elementary school that work with students in grades kindergarten through third continue to work through CESA 3 in the Keys to Beginning Reading training that are part of the Wisconsin 2023 Act 20 requirements. They've been putting a lot of time for that, both right at the start of the year and then throughout each week. The Cuba City Elementary School all together showed great enthusiasm and spirit during homecoming week, dress-up days, and attending the homecoming events. We have a special shout out to our food service team, Joyce Denard, Kelly Banfield, Holly Shireman, John Baker, and Kevin Cole for serving a wonderful tailgate lunch outdoors, and as well to our custodial team for making it possible that day. I want to thank the local Lions Club for conducting vision screening for students. That event was coordinated by Linda Hilbers, and there were many Lions Club members that attended. I want to thank the Grant County Health Department for conducting hearing screening and assisting with the vision screening. Nurses Casey Gradle, Julie Atkinson, and others were on hand to help with the event. We piled that right into Picture Day, which was a success. We had our first year utilizing Jostens for pictures, and things went very, very well. We were very pleased with the results. I want to thank a few Cuba City alumni, Sean Dietzel and Tom Rindy, for providing Tractor Day to our 4K classes. I think it's safe to say it was a huge event. Thank Miss Sharon Olson for organizing and conducting our Fall Scholastic Book Fair. Lots of families have added many books to their home libraries. Want to thank Angela and Dan Belkin of Bell Kennels. They brought in a recent litter of puppies and provided students and staff with a welcome cuddle break in their day. On that same day, we had some student leaders from our varsity football and volleyball teams join and lead our 3rd through 5th graders with our Cuban celebration dance party. We want to thank Mr. Sander, Coach Lawson, and Coach Kopp for helping with that initiative. Fire Prevention Week included a successful fire drill and a visit from the local fire department. We want to thank you. Shout out to all of our local department volunteers and the members that came in to teach our students about safety and showing us the equipment they use when our community is in need. 5th and 6th grade band members shined at our October 3rd concert in the gym. The concert was very well attended, and Mr. Clayton and his bands entertained all. Thank you to the families and teachers for their time during parent-teacher conferences. Overall, at the elementary school, we had 260 conferences held, 58 of which were virtual. And then some things coming up. We will be hosting a Food with Families during breakfast on October 24th. So we invite all board members over to attend. Might be an opportunity to connect with community. I think we've got 104. I think it's up to 140.
Ooh.
140 RSVP for that event.
And that closed this morning.
They closed this morning.
What time?
It starts at 7 a.m. Yeah. Yep, on the
Get up
24th.
early.
And then this Sunday, the Cuba City PTO will be hosting the 2nd annual Fall Festival and Trunk or Treat event. And there will be food trucks, activities, candy for all. And that starts at
11
yeah, I believe it is 11
11 to
o'clock.
1.
So there's been a lot of advertisement for that on social media.
We're
We welcome
hopeful for
everybody to,
big turnout.
yeah, we don't want the wind we had last Sunday. But yeah, yes, a lot of energy with that.
Yeah.
That's
Thank you,
everything.
Jason. Chris, the middle and high school report?
Yeah, we are officially in the second quarter. Congratulations to the girls golf team on qualifying for sectionals, and especially to Brooklyn Busson for finishing 3rd at sectionals and then earning her trip to the state tournament where she finished 20th out of 39 golfers. Football finished up the regular season with a win by forfeit this final week. Volleyball will wrap up their regular season next week, and cross country will be competing in conference meet tomorrow at Riverdale, which begins their tournament. Middle school had their first quarterly Cuban celebration this past Monday. They celebrated all that they have accomplished in the first quarter. High school and middle school bands both marched in the Keeler Fire Prevention Parade, wrapping up the marching portion of the band for the season. They are now beginning to prepare for their holiday concert, which will be here before we know it. Seniors in music were able to travel to the Overture Center in Madison for their senior music trip last Friday. So again, thank you to the Parents Music Club for making that trip happen. FFA students have been busy selling fruit and competing. They had a team that went to state soils judging competition. They competed at the Milford Trap competition, and they had the dairy, forage, and dairy products competition. Ms. Merwin's adult living classes have done the babies. Students can be found carrying babies in car seats around the school. They're responsible for finding childcare when they can't be with their little ones. And this is an incredible opportunity for students to learn about the difficulties that can come with being a parent. Huge shout out to Lucas Toma, Trenton Ender, Ty Myers, and Will Teasdale. These high school students volunteered their time to travel over to One Up USA in Dickeyville last week. They spent approximately 4 hours each assembling bicycles that were given away by Candate and One Up USA that all of our first, second, third graders received, that were assembled by volunteers that included these boys. With last week being Wisconsin School Board Week, I'd like to recognize all of the school board members and thank you for all that you do for our students, staff, and administration. Your work is appreciated. To wrap up this month's report, I want to share some background information with our homecoming court and why we recognize royalty and not the traditional king and queen. I did receive some parent questions and thought this might help clear up some confusion. So according to Ms. Turman's notes, this was a change that happened back in 2021. Ms. Turman is the student council advisor, and she noted that the student council of 2021 had interest in making the change to be more inclusive and voted that year to change selecting homecoming royalty instead of a king and queen. This group decided that all students should be asked if they wanted to be included on the homecoming ballot. Students can accept to be on the ballot or decline to be left off of the ballot. Students then select members from their class to represent their class. It's not split by gender. 2 students are selected from the 6 seniors, and they become the homecoming royalty. No teachers, administration, or school board members were a part of this change. It was something that was decided upon by the student council. Student council students are selected to represent their student body and elected by that student body. So at any point, if the current student council was to decide to change things back to the traditional king and queen, they could arrange to vote on it and make that change.
Thank you for that.
Whitney, special ed, please.
Yes, so this month with the second quarter beginning, I've been working very closely with my paraprofessionals and changing some of our schedules. So as the school year proceeds, student needs change. So I just want to give a huge shout out to all of the elementary paras that stayed behind this week. Yeah, what was that? Tuesday. Yesterday, it was yesterday. Tuesday, they helped me. I have a huge matrix. I have it all color coordinated, and they were a godsend because they helped me figure out. I told them, you live and breathe this every day. I need your help. So they came and they were amazing. They picked out lots of errors. So we are ready to roll with that on Monday. So I'm very grateful for them. With the end of quarter one, the special education teachers have worked very hard to get their students' progress reports updated, and they will be getting sent out to parents if they haven't done so already. Their deadline will be Friday. Progress reports are completed 4 times the school year at the end of each quarter, and these reports indicate if their students are on track to meet their IEP goals, supported by data for their growth or the lack of their progress, and then what their steps will be to help increase that progress. To wrap up this, I just wanted to talk about the SIT, so a student intervention team. We have these meetings more commonly at the elementary school than at middle school and high school level, although they can happen at the middle school and high school level. They're just more common on the elementary level. So when SIT meetings occur, they typically occur because teachers have concerns about academic or behavioral needs. When teachers have these concerns, we have a specific form that they'll fill out. They forward that to Jason and myself. We collaborate with them to schedule a meeting. At the first SIT meeting, we talk about the student's strengths, what the concerns are, and then typically benchmarks if it's an academic concern. We then review the parent communication log, interventions that the student is currently receiving, along with current data. As a team, we collaborate together to determine the next steps and strategies to implement for the next 6 to 8 weeks. We then, before ending that meeting, we set a re-meet date, and that's usually within the 6 to 8 weeks. Throughout this process, progress monitoring is collected weekly. And then if the second SIT is required, then we again review everything. If growth is minimal, then that's when a referral for special education can occur. The amount of instructional intervention a student needs varies, but research suggests that elementary students may need up to 16 weeks to show growth. Secondary students who struggle may need more time than that.
Thank you, Whitney.
Yeah.
Heather, the business report?
I have submitted the annual report and the special ed annual report for 23-24. And so with the submission of those 2 reports, I was officially able to close the 23-24 fiscal year, which makes me very happy to only work in 1 fiscal year. It might not seem like a big deal, but it's a good thing, right, Tina? Who submits purchase orders? Mm-hmm. It's very exciting only to have 1 fiscal year. An update on our referendum or our Fund 49 checking account. In the month of September, we only had interest, so our revenue totaled $21.46. So our balance at the end of September was $8,749.29. In other news, the district recently had 3 employment openings. So I worked with the corresponding supervisor for each of these openings, and we have all of those positions filled. Last week, as it's been mentioned,
I did attend the first operating referendum listening session, so I want to thank everyone that attended. And the next opportunity to come to a listening session is October 23rd in Dickeyville. And then I am starting to work on my presentation as well as all the other documents that I need to create for the annual meeting that's coming up in about a week and a half. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Heather. Aaron, Superintendent?
Thank you. We've been requesting FEMA to provide both school districts, they're working with Cuba City and Potosi, with something to share to our community, just due to the lengthy approval process of this design. And we finally received something. So I'm going to read something directly to you from FEMA. And it's while it's not the everything is approved message that we're waiting for, it's just a reminder that we are moving forward with this grant, and our school districts continue to prioritize this project and remain patient and responsive as needed. So from FEMA, since the fiscal year 2022, building resilient infrastructure and communities, or BRIC applications, were identified for further review, local officials from Potosi and Cuba City have responded to multiple requests for information about the Safe Room application. Kurt Cohen and Aaron Olson have participated in several discussions with FEMA staff to help clarify the community's needs for the project. They've engaged with all requests promptly, advocating for the protection of Potosi and Cuba City residents against severe weather hazards. Multi-use safe rooms are complex projects. FEMA's engineers use the additional information provided to further assess the application for eligibility and cost effectiveness as required by FEMA's program assistance. FEMA appreciates the continued involvement of Kurt and Aaron and look forward to providing a productive working relationship. So it's not everything, but I just wanted our community members to know that this is still going on. This is still part of the process, and it does take a long time. It is a very big chunk of money. They're trying to be diligent, and as frustrating as it can be, we have to remain patient with that. Additionally, we want to inform community about the financial impact of Wisconsin private school choice programs and special needs scholarship programs. So this year, the program will double our expected costs, rising from $28,000 last year to $56,000 this year. Our neighboring school, Prairie du Chien, is facing $250,000 in costs. In fact, they went for a $250,000 operating referendum last April that failed. And now they got this that showed up on their revenue limit worksheet that they have to tax their citizens another $250 for private school choice programs. And so what is this? These programs divert public dollars from our schools to private institutions, undermining public education. So the Milwaukee, Racine, and Wisconsin parental choice programs, those are the three, along with special needs scholarship programs, reduce public school funding. So since 2015-16, public school districts have had state aid reduced to cover private school students' tuition. Enrollment caps for voucher students continue to increase, further straining public resources. This year, all of our students in a public school received an additional $325 per student, while these charter high school students received over $3,000 increase per student. This system is ineffective and lacks transparency. With the DPI can't even tell us what students are going to what schools, but we have to tax for it. Importantly, local private schools, St. Rose and HGIC, are not part of this. That not a dollar is going to our local private schools. So that's enough about that. But we were anticipating about half of what ended up on our revenue limit worksheet today. Our administrative team has been active in the community, attending 12 events thus far to answer questions that we talked about. We've got 7 more scheduled, including some informational sessions, combined with media coverage that we talked about. So a big thank you to the administrators and board members who have been actively sharing information on behalf of the district. We're going to have some new trees planted along School Street shortly between the elementary and middle school. After removing 5 trees this summer, the Building and Grounds Committee approved replanting 5 trees. And that generally mid-October is when people will say the best time to plant trees are. Our third Friday count is complete. Our enrollment means how many students, like butts and seats, is 678. So over the past 5 years, our enrollment has been pretty consistent with 652 in 2021. Everybody dropped in 2021 because that was the height of the pandemic. And then 680 the next year, 674, 671 last year, and then 678 this year. So in the last 4 years, the least we've had is 671, and the most we've had is 680, which represents pretty consistent numbers for the district.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
We'll move on to new business. Approve the date and time for the November board meeting. I understand there's a request to move it. And so when are we going to hold that?
We have it for November 20th. I was going to ask to go from 6:30 to 5, but then Angie said she can't make that. So do we want to look at a different date? We usually go on Wednesdays. The Wednesday before would be the 13th. The Wednesday after is like the night before Thanksgiving. I don't think anybody wants to do that. Would the 13th work?
13th does not work for me.
13th does not work.
Can we do a non-Wednesday night? I guess I'm just asking.
Do we want to look at Monday, November 18th?
I don't want to commit to Mondays or Tuesdays until the basketball schedule comes out because I'm coaching.
Oh, you're coaching for that. Okay.
And I don't know what day.
Are some games Mondays or are they always Tuesday, Thursday?
CCYB, my practice will be on Mondays or Tuesdays.
Oh, got it.
Yes.
Thursday, the 14th. I'm just going to throw out some dates. You guys can tell me if it works.
I could make the 14th.
Thursday, the 14th.
14th, Dan?
I'm fine on the
We want to
14th.
go at 6:30 then on Tuesday, Thursday, Thursday, November 14th.
Oh, wait, that's NHS induction.
I was just gonna say.
Oh, it is.
Oh.
Okay, I don't have that.
So Tuesday,
That's
the
Tuesday, the 12th.
No Tuesday for me.
oh yeah,
Tuesday, yeah.
Do we hold it the 20th without Angie?
It's fine too, whatever.
I mean, I'm,
I just know
asking.
that the November one's probably
What
gonna be a pretty big meeting depending on the outcome of the election on that.
Oh,
Yeah.
what time do you need to go, Aaron, on that?
5 o'clock would be great. 5:30 would probably be the latest I'd like to start. That's Brady's first home game.
Yeah, how does that work for everyone? I mean, I'd be fairly the Angie.
I can go early.
I can do 5.
5 o'clock. So same day at 5 o'clock.
Well, I just was asking if that knocked more people out, then we should move it, but
Oh, what about the 21st? Did we check the 21st? That's the night after we were supposed to have.
I'm fine with the
I'm
21st.
fine on the 21st.
Chris, is there anything on the calendar?
I do not see anything on the 21st.
Does that work?
Thursday, the 21st works for me.
Appreciate it, thank you, yeah.
You're
that
okay?
would-
At
that's-
6:30.
Works for me, yeah.
All right.
November 21st. At. So somebody should make a motion that says that.
I, partially to make sure I have the notes correct. I will move to approve the November regular board meeting for Thursday, November 21st at 6:30 PM.
I will second.
Joel,
Yes.
Barth,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Hitterman, yes. Pohl,
Yes.
Bowden,
Yes.
Andrews,
Yes.
motion carried.
And then B is approve the spring 2025 ECCP and College Up list.
Yes, so CCP and College Up class list, which you'll have there, those are classes that we have to by state law pay for those students to take. We work with Southwest Technical College for those. And every October, we have to approve the list every October for second semester, and then we do it in March for the following first semester.
Any questions, board? Would someone move, please?
I'll move to approve the spring 2025 ECCP and college up list as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Joel,
Yes.
Barth,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Hitterman, yes. Pohl,
Yes.
Bowden,
Yes.
Andrews,
Yes.
motion carried.
And then we're on to personnel, is approved the hiring of John Murray as a part-time food service employee.
Yeah, this position was created by a retirement food service employee. John also drives bus for Davis Bus Lines, so he works with our students already.
If there's no questions, would somebody move?
I'll move to approve the hiring of John Murray as part-time food service employee as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Joel,
Yes.
Barth,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Hinderman, yes, Pohl,
Yes.
Bowden,
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes.
Motion carried.
B is approved the hiring of Brian Coulthard as a full-time elementary first shift custodian.
Yep, Brian's been a substitute custodian and summer helper for the last 2 years. He's done some long-term sub positions at the elementary, and he's been doing a great job so far. So everybody on the administrative team here recommends it.
If there's no questions again, would someone move?
I'll move to approve the hiring of Brian Coulthard as full-time CCES first shift custodian as presented.
Is there a second?
Joel,
Yes.
Barth,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Hinderman, yes, Pohl,
Yes.
Bowden,
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes.
Motion carried.
C is approved the hiring of Shelby Klebenstein as elementary paraprofessional.
Yep, this position was created last week when a paraprofessional left the district for another position closer to her home. She interviewed for the position back a while ago, and was this somebody who we had already interviewed, or did this person interview last week? We interviewed her this summer for a different position. She was, we called her back and she was interested, so we recommend that you approve this position.
Okay. Would someone move?
I'll move to approve the hiring of Shelby Klemenstein as CCES paraprofessional as presented.
Is there a second?
I will second. Joel.
Yes.
Barth,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Hinderman, yes, Pohl,
Yes.
Bowden,
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item D is approved Cameron Handy as volunteer high school boys basketball coach.
Yep, Cameron is actually our full-time buildings and grounds director. He's a sports fan, and he asked if he could work, and then we said we have to or just volunteer his time. We said we got to take that to the board, so he's been doing a wonderful job for us. We recommend that we approve this.
Aaron, I got a couple questions.
Yep.
Okay, if he does that, let's say we got inclement weather, how are we gonna cover that if he's going with the team?
So we'd have to look ahead and know that, he can volunteer when he can, but there are times where that job obviously comes first.
Right. You got a building grounds being coming up down the road or not?
We could
At this point, we don't have any.
Are they ready for winter?
Yep.
Can we blow the water lines out?
I don't think. That's certainly something you could add. Do you want to meet for that?
Well,
Or,
I don't know, that's,
like, you're the chair, so when you
I
tell me
know,
that we're gonna have a
I
meeting.
wouldn't mind
maybe-
having one just to see how things are going and see what's getting done.
Should we motion this
Yeah.
one, close this one out first? Before we?
we can discuss that at
At
the
the-
committee reports, Chuck, in just a minute, if that's okay.
I'll move to approve Cameron Handy as volunteer CCHS boys basketball coach as presented.
I'll second.
Joel.
Yes.
Barth,
Yes.
White,
Yes.
Hinderman, yes, Pohl,
No,
Bowden,
Yes.
Andrews.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Committee reports, budget and finance. I don't know if there's anything to add to what's already been discussed.
No.
All right, building and grounds, Chuck.
yeah, I would just like to go over some things, see how things are going, because we're short of staff. Just see how they're getting ready for winter, because there's some things that gotta be done outside. I don't know if they're addressing them or not, because it'll be costly if they're not.
Okay.
So you want to suggest a
Well, you guys,
meeting?
works for everybody. I mean, it doesn't have to be tomorrow.
No.
Okay. I'll look at some different dates and send out to buildings. and grounds
Yeah,
committee.
and see what we come up with. Okay? Thank you.
Personnel, looks like we're going to meet after the November election.
Yep.
So we can maybe discuss that, I guess, at our November meeting. Policy, nothing new.
Yeah, about after 3 or 4 months, so probably again in January, I would assume.
Technology, transportation,
November, December, we'll actually go to the bus garage for that meeting.
you don't have a date set up as of yet.
We don't have one yet. Right? I want to get the personnel thing scheduled and then know.
All right. Foundation, probably only once a year or so.
We meet in the spring again.
Yeah, January, February.
And I don't have anything as CISA 3 representative, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
Long cast.